In response to airstrikes carried out by the United States a few days earlier, Iranian military forces demonstrated their might by launching highly lethal ballistic missiles at Tel Aviv, Israel. These missiles not only destroyed several critical infrastructure targets, but also successfully struck an underground bunker that had served as a shelter for Israeli nuclear scientists and senior military officials involved in the country's nuclear program. This bunker, located in central Tel Aviv, was carefully camouflaged by Israeli authorities, making it extremely difficult to target. However, Iran's strike proved that, despite being designed to withstand conventional attacks, Iran's military capabilities were able to breach its defenses. This marks the beginning of a new phase of uncertainty in the escalating tensions in the Middle East. The powerful explosion caused by Iran's Fattah missiles shook Tel Aviv with devastating force. The shock wave from the impacts tore through the city's air, stunning everyone in the area or nearby. Eyewitnesses described a terrifying scene. Massive flames shot into the sky, creating an infernal landscape visible even from a great distance. The dark night sky turned red, as if reflecting the brutality just unleashed. Amid the chaos, people fled in panic, escaping falling debris, while the sirens of ambulances and police wailed, intensifying the already tense atmosphere. This attack was a direct response by the Iranian government to the U.S. airstrike that, days earlier, destroyed Iranian military and strategic infrastructure, prompting strong condemnation from Tehran. Iranian authorities labeled the attack a provocative act, reflecting the United States' disregard for Iran's sovereignty and the rights of its people. According to senior Iranian officials, the goal of these strikes was not only to destroy infrastructure, but also to hinder the development of Iran's nuclear program. The tension between these two superpowers has reached a new peak following the airstrikes, with no signs of de-escalation in the near future. On the contrary, the Iranian government has reinforced its stance and is prepared for further strikes if necessary. When Iran's missiles hit Tel Aviv, the primary target was the camouflaged bunker, where it is believed leading Israeli nuclear scientists and senior military officials responsible for the development and oversight of Israel's nuclear program were gathered. The secret meeting in the bunker was focused on discussing the future strategy of Israel's nuclear program, which has long been a focal point of international attention. While the exact number of people present at the site has not yet been confirmed, it is estimated to be significant, including several high-ranking government officials. The presence of scientists and military personnel made this bunker a critical strategic target for Iran, and its destruction will undoubtedly have a significant impact on Israel's nuclear program. In an initial statement, Israeli military forces confirmed that Iran's missile strike on the heavily guarded bunker was successful. Despite being designed to withstand major attacks, the bunker could not resist the power of the Fattah missiles. Equipped with advanced technologies to protect against airstrikes and other conventional attacks, the bunker was overwhelmed by the high-precision ballistic assault. Despite ongoing recovery and evacuation efforts, the damage was extensive. Israeli military officials are now forced to acknowledge that the threat from Iran cannot be underestimated, while the international community watches the conflict's development with concern. In response to the U.S. airstrike, Iran's government has shown a firm and unwavering stance. They view the U.S. attacks, aimed at destroying Iranian military and infrastructure targets, as posing no significant threat capable of weakening the country. Iran labeled these strikes as superficial, destroying only a small portion of its infrastructure without impacting its military capacity. According to an official statement, the attacks were predictable and did not surprise Iran. For them, this is merely the first step in a U.S. plan to intimidate the nation. Consequently, Iran's response was far more forceful and meticulously planned, with a clear intent to not let this provocation go unanswered. Following the U.S. airstrike, Iran announced to the world that it would not stop there. In a speech, a senior Iranian government representative emphasized that the recent strike on Tel Aviv does not mark the end of military actions. On the contrary, they stated that the next strikes would target the United States directly, which Iran considers the primary source of the tension. Iran made it clear that it would use its full military might to respond to any provocative actions by the U.S., demonstrating its readiness to escalate the conflict and its determination not to back down despite growing international pressure. This stance heightens fears of a potential large-scale war in the Middle East. Iran's Ministry of Defense stated that the retaliatory strike was pre-planned as part of a long-term strategy to counter threats from the U.S. and its allies. Iran emphasized that the initial U.S. strike barely affected them and had no significant impact. The country claims to possess far greater capabilities to launch more devastating attacks on strategic targets, including key military bases and vital infrastructure in the Middle East. Iran vows that future strikes will be more precise and destructive, aiming to teach the United States a lesson, which it accuses of destabilizing the region with aggressive actions. For Iran, this is not just about revenge, but about demonstrating its resilience and ability to withstand international pressure. The U.S. government, initially confident in its military superiority, was taken aback by the speed and precision of Iran's strikes. Some senior U.S. military officials admitted they did not expect such a rapid and lethal response from Iran. The strikes on Tel Aviv, which destroyed Israel's strategic bunkers, showed that Iran possesses far greater military potential than previously thought. Currently, U.S. forces are preparing for possible further Iranian attacks, deploying air defense systems, and increasing vigilance in strategic areas. Some military analysts warn that Iran's retaliatory potential could be significant, given its growing missile capabilities and destructive power, which should not be underestimated. The United States is now in a defensive position, trying to develop a new strategy to counter this unexpected escalation. Despite the retaliatory strike showcasing Iran's strength and determination to defend its territory, the country also reminded the world that this is not the end of a larger conflict. Iran emphasized that the next strikes will be more devastating and will target key objectives in the United States and its allies. They urged the U.S. to understand that its actions have worsened an already tense situation and that it must face the consequences. In a speech, a senior Iranian official stressed that the world must prepare for rising tensions in the Middle East and that major powers should stop interfering in the internal affairs of other nations, including Iran. This attack marked a turning point in international relations, with Iran increasingly demonstrating its ability to withstand and confront external pressure. In Tel Aviv, the situation has become even more chaotic following the Iranian attack, which destroyed much of the city. Buildings that once stood tall are now piles of rubble. Cars are burning, and iconic skyscrapers have been reduced to shards of metal and glass. The city, usually vibrant and densely populated, now appears deserted and grim. Survivors fled in panic, seeking shelter in safer areas, some severely injured, leaving trails of blood on the destroyed streets. The constant sound of ambulance and rescue vehicle sirens heightens the tension, underscoring the growing number of victims needing medical attention. Despite ongoing rescue efforts, the situation remains dire, with many buildings demolished and infrastructure completely devastated. From the bunker, now reduced to rubble, only a few radio signals have been received, giving Israeli intelligence hope of gaining more information about the situation inside. According to reports, several Israeli military officials in the bunker sustained serious injuries, some in critical condition. The fate of the nuclear scientists also remains unknown. Israeli authorities continue search and rescue operations, though limited information and communication make these efforts challenging. Tension is rising among families and colleagues anxiously awaiting news, hoping those trapped under the debris will be rescued in time. In Iran, the country's leader not only stated that this attack was a response to U.S. provocations, but also a clear signal to the world that Iran will not tolerate these actions without consequences. Iran warned U.S. allies in the Middle East not to interfere, stating it would not hesitate to take more decisive measures if necessary. The Iranian government emphasized that this attack is part of a pre-planned strategy and that, should U.S. pressure continue, further military actions will follow. Iran is in a position to demonstrate its strength on the global stage, while the world watches how it will continue its retaliation tactics. In Tel Aviv, despite the efforts of Israeli forces to evacuate and assist victims trapped under the rubble, the situation grows increasingly grim. The next Iranian attack is expected to be imminent, and tension among Israeli military circles is at its peak. Israeli fighter jets patrol the skies, ready to repel further attacks and protect their territory. However, no one can predict with certainty whether the next attacks will be more precise or even more devastating. Israeli authorities have urged citizens to remain vigilant and seek shelter immediately. Despite the fear and despair, tension grows with every second. The world watches with concern whether the next attack will worsen the situation or cause even more destruction. The recent attacks have shaken the global political balance, and their effects are felt far beyond the Middle East. Many nations have strongly condemned the military actions of both superpowers, expressing concern over a potential escalation that could undermine global stability. Some see this attack as the start of a new phase of international tension that could lead to a third world war. The uncertainty and rising tension envelop the Middle East, now at the center of global attention. Major powers with strategic interests in the region have begun reviewing their foreign policies, while the global population worries about the potential consequences of this conflict. The nuclear issue, the presence of foreign troops, and the threat of a large-scale war have become key topics in diplomacy, raising serious questions about how the world will respond to this increasingly alarming conflict. In the United States, the president, senior military, and intelligence officials held an emergency meeting following Iran's major attack on Israel. The tense atmosphere reflected deep concern about the conflict's escalation. While the U.S. government was confident in its military superiority, the current reality is far more complex. Iran has demonstrated much stronger military capabilities than expected, showing remarkable resilience in the face of external threats. The president and his team must now carefully consider the next steps, aware that further Iranian action could lead to even more devastating consequences. Some in the administration are beginning to question the effectiveness of the current approach and what measures to take to avoid an open conflict that could undermine global stability. These emergency meetings are crucial as the future of international relations depends on the decisions made in the coming hours. Following the attack on Israel, Iranian forces are increasingly confident in their ability to confront the U.S. if necessary. According to their statements, they now possess a more robust defense system and are ready to repel any potential U.S. counterattack. They claim Iran will not back down and is prepared for further military actions if needed. In a message to the world, Iran announced that the next targets will include strategic areas in the Persian Gulf and key U.S. objectives in the region. If the U.S. persists in its provocative policy, Iran vows to use its full military arsenal, including long-range missiles and submarines, to defend its sovereignty and strike back at the United States. In Tel Aviv and Washington, senior military officials face a critical dilemma. Despite being prepared for all possible scenarios, Iran has demonstrated formidable military potential. The attack on the bunkers of Israeli scientists and military personnel in Tel Aviv is clear evidence that Iran can carry out precise and effective strikes that exceed expectations. Some major powers involved in negotiations on the nuclear program and global security are already feeling the repercussions of this tension. Countries like Russia, China, and some European nations fear that this confrontation could escalate into a broader conflict involving more countries, affecting global economic stability. Their governments are closely monitoring developments and attempting to prepare diplomatic measures to reduce tension, but the path to de-escalation is becoming increasingly difficult. Global uncertainty is growing, and many nations wonder whether the world can avoid a large-scale war. Following the devastating attacks and ongoing threats from both sides, the world awaits anxiously what comes next. Will Iran fulfill its promise to respond to U.S. strikes with broader attacks, or will both nations find a path to reconciliation that can ease the growing tension? The decisions made in the coming days will determine the course of international relations and global security. Many hope that diplomacy and negotiations can reduce the tension, but with each new strike, those hopes fade. The international community remains in tense anticipation, hoping that the decisions made will avert a greater catastrophe. This uncertainty concerns many, as the future of the Middle East and the world now depends on the actions of these two great powers. Meanwhile, in Tel Aviv, the fighting continues. Despite the devastation caused by the Iranian attack, Israeli military officials are working tirelessly to address the aftermath, focusing on rescuing victims and restoring damaged infrastructure. Amid the chaos, Israeli forces are preparing for possible new Iranian attacks. Meanwhile, Iranian forces, increasingly ready to continue hostilities, await orders to launch new strikes against strategic targets in the Persian Gulf. The tension between both nations has reached its peak, with each side showing readiness for further confrontations. The world, closely following developments, increasingly fears that the situation could escalate into an open war that would not only devastate the Middle East, but also shake global stability. The tension is mounting, and for now, no one can predict when or how this conflict will end.